Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to After the Roll, The Legend of Vox Machina, Season 1, Episode 6, Spark of Rebellion. As I said, tonight I am being joined by my co-host, Billy, and the other co-host is LJ, who is not able to join us tonight because there is something that is precluding her from being with us. How are you tonight, Billy? Welcome to the chat again.
Yeah, I'm doing great. As always, I'm super excited to be here to talk about The Legend of Vox Machina. This is another passion show for me, so this is great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it has definitely become a passion show for me as well because I absolutely love it. I got to see some stuff today that I'd like to see. Or in this episode, I got to see some stuff that I like to see, some stuff that I'm waiting to come back, especially with Percy and his little glitch things that he has, for lack of a better term. But yeah, what was that?
Remember back in episode 1 and 2 when you were like, I'm not getting enough about Percy.
Yeah, now we're getting all about Percy, and it is fantastic. I really love how they've how the story is unfolding and going along, and I know we'll get into it, but I'm still kind of curious about Pike because they're doing this like teasing thing with her, like they're carrying her along in each episode, but it's like just little snippets, and I don't know if we know the background behind it and why that is happening, but like I said, I was kind of concerned about how they were going to handle it, and I still have those concerns with it at this point.
Yeah, I agree. As we've discussed, story wise, why this happened. I was really excited to hopefully get like what she was doing fleshed out because in the actual campaign we don't know what Pike's doing. She just disappears for a while, and I'm a little bit disappointed because I feel like we're not getting enough when we do have her, and what we do get is just kind of lackluster.
Yeah, at least this one was better positioned, her spot in this episode, but again, it's a drop of a storyline. Like we're literally getting a snippet, and it'd be nice to have. I know there's so much story to cover for everybody else, unless she wasn't there, so it makes sense to not give everything and all the airtime to her. But it's just really like a little like an eyedropper of like, here's Pike, just to keep her relevant, and then it goes on.
I know that it's maybe not feasible since they only had 12 episodes. Like you said, there's a lot of content to go into these episodes, but I kind of wonder if maybe they should have had, a standalone Pike episode adventure where we actually get to see kind of from start to finish what she's going through instead of these little tidbits that kind of are getting lost.
Yeah, because that's a big thing, and it's like we were talking about before, is being able to see the back end of everything. And, when you're sitting around a table at a campaign, you don't get to see the machinations of the villains. You don't get to see their plans. You don't get to see how they interact with each other and all this stuff. It's just everyone is kind of there. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of the almost sense of disappointment that is stemming from this, is that we know Pike is there, but it's like she's not. There's just so much little. And I think that is a very important thing when you're doing a story, is to be able to look at it from different perspectives. That's what gives depth, tension, so many things tie into and even if you do have one main character, showing them from the perspective of other characters allows you to add more depth to it. And for the tension, it just sets up, like if you see the bad guy setting up a trap and you see the good guy walking into it, then and you get that like don't go into the basement horror movie impact.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too because like you said, when you're sitting at a table doing a campaign, you're not getting all the stuff from the villains either. You're not seeing their motives behind the scenes. You're not seeing how they interact with each other. And we are getting that. And I feel like those scenes have been done really well.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing like jarring about them. They give you just enough information to be very interesting. And I find the difference between those scenes and Pike scenes to be very interesting.
Yeah. But it does make sense as to why it's like that. But that's the thing that I find with it is they do so much well with this show, though. And that's what I found with this one. I've got points where I'm like, I paused when I was watching it. I'm like, for a scene that we're gonna get into, and I was like, well, how did this, like, my eyes had a big thing of like, how? It's like, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did this happen? How did this happen?
Right.
And then we get to the very end scene, and it's like, oh, okay, well, all
Wow.
my how questions are now thrown out the window, and now I'm sitting here going, what the hell? So let's jump in to the episode. We start off with seeing the rebels planning, and uh, why am I blanking? Wasn't Archie, not Alex, Archie.
Archie,
We see
yeah.
Archibald discussing everything that's happening within
What a great
the
name.
rebels. What was that?
What a great name. When I think like Defender of the Realm, like Hidden Resistance, Archibald's a good name for that.
It is a good name. Thing I find interesting about this show is the accents. The accents are all really done well. I mean, obviously they've got extremely talented voice actors that are doing these
Yep.
things, but for like these small towns and like Briarwood and, or not Briarwood, but Whitestone and all these things that are there, it's like, okay, well, how come everybody's got a different accent? How
Right.
does Archie have such a strong Celtic accent? Is he like an import into the area, or is this just like, you know? 'Cause then that's, but I think that's just an interesting thing, and that adds another level of complexity to it. One thing I did pick up on, and maybe I'm wrong in this on a side note, but to me it was like, oh, that's really cool, is the fact that we're talking about Whitestone. That's where the Wirewoods are. That's everything that happened. And Percy's old tutor is one of the ones that helped, as we know from before, but in this episode as well, that slaughtered the family, did all these other things. And his name is Stonefell. So the guy that helped take down Whitestone, name is Stonefell.
So yes, that is true, but I believe you're actually mixing up two characters. So the tutor, the professor, is Professor Anders,
That's right.
who
And
is different.
yeah, but Stonefell was
Captain of the Guard.
with the,
Yep.
yeah. But anyway, but Stonefell was there, and he was instrumental in taking down Whitestone. And I just found it interesting that his name was Stonefell. I made that connection in this episode.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if that was on purpose or like designed that way or not. But anyway,
I'm sure it was. There's very little in these stories that haven't been very carefully planned.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, Matthew Mercer should be writing everything for everyone in the future, because he seems to get these story plot points done so well. I don't understand why he hasn't been tapped for more TV.
I think he might be after this. Honestly, I think
Yep.
when people are seeing this out, and that's if people are paying attention. I've said before, it's interesting that we're basically doing a film study course or like a literature course on this by taking a look at it and breaking down the storylines and all these other things, and it's stuff that a lot of people hate when they're in school. I always kind of loved
Yeah,
it.
right.
And now it's just something like, yeah, we get to actually do this and break it down and have great conversations and get to see these insights. I read a story recently. I was talking to the author about it afterwards, and it was just part one. And I was like, so from what I read in part one, I think this is how things are going to lay out and how the story is going to end. And they kind of stopped and looked off to the side, and they were like, of everyone who has read this story, you're the only one who picked up how it's going to end. Like, that's what I do. I take stories, I tear them apart, and I take a look at where they're going. So we have the rebels planning, and they're in this beautiful underground, or like basement kind of space. And then we have Bryn walking in with news of Kestrel, who is, we come to find, is their spy. What do you think of this? What did you think of the opening scene for this? It was kind of a cold open before the credits.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really consider the fact that that was the cold open until you just started talking about it, and I went, "Oh man, that was definitely a cold open." And I thought it was very good. It was very timely. It's our second show on the after the series, where I think the cold opens have just been really, really, really good, really well done, and give a lot of information in a short period of time. I didn't even think to look up that character's name, Bryn. So I'm glad that you happen to know what it is. But I think it was a lot of fun, and the thing that I was thinking the entire time during it was, here you go, Travis. Here's your giants. You wanted more giants. Here you go.
Oh yeah, and I still stand by the fact that they are very Doomsday-esque, like skinnier, a little more ribby, and like taller. I think like more lanky, let's say. But yeah, that was a great way of doing giants. Hey SJ, how are you tonight? Welcome to the chat. But yeah, just I really loved the grabbing and the on top was fantastic.
Oh,
Hey, thank you for
squish.
the raid, SJ. Speaking of, of things, we have a raid coming in. But yeah, so Bryn comes in and shows an emblem on a scrap
Yep.
of fabric, paper, something. And
Unknown.
yeah, and just has word that the Kestrel is taken and they know where they are. And then they get attacked by the giant. The giant comes through, and again, that was just so. There's no wasted space in that, or no wasted air. The roof, like, oh,
Nope.
he's here. The roof gets ripped off. No, like I think one guard dies. They kill one
Uh,
guard.
Two,
Two?
because one gets eaten as well.
No, I mean one of the
Oh, the
the city
the
guards,
enemy
the pale
guards.
guards. Yeah,
Yeah, only one that I remember seeing on screen.
because Archibald kills one as soon as he opens the door. He kills that one, and then I think everyone else is just kind of head bitten off, smacked,
Overrun.
smushed, punched. It was pretty. All right, enjoy the lurk, Blinkerbell. Thank you for being here.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So that was the only one of the things that I liked about the scene, and the one thing that I criticized about the scene is I like the fact that we get a chance to see the emblem, that they're showing you, okay, this is how the resistance knows each other, because it gives you insight into what happens next when the party is caught in the city. But at the same time, there's so few of them that when Bryn comes in and has to show this symbol in order to like get past the guard, there's like four of them. So come on, guys, I think you know who it is.
yeah. There's been a couple of times in the show. I haven't brought it up in the past, but there's been a couple of times where I'm like, shouldn't you all know each other? Like not just in this
Yeah.
episode, but in past episodes too, where it's like, there's not a lot of people going on. I think there was one point that I did bring it up where it was I don't remember, but oh no, sorry, that was from that was from a movie I watched on Monday. Never mind. On
Oh,
Thursday.
that's not our problem.
Yeah, no, that was a movie we watched on stream. The Octopus, where it's a small town, and they're like this woman's like, my father's at the lighthouse. Well, what lighthouse is it? The only lighthouse in your small town.
That
I'm pretty
one?
sure. And all these people coming off the shore, and you find out that there are all these different, like, they're like hiding who they were that come to the lighthouse, and it's like, it's a small town. How did you guys not know each other? Did no one do an ice breaking thing, like, remembering
Right.
everyone's name down the line or something? But so we do have that. I agree with that. That is kind of silly. They come in, but I mean, it's such an aggressive thing too. Like they don't even look. Had she
Yeah.
been coming a little bit faster, she would have been decapitated.
Yep, absolutely.
Just
And
blazed.
I do like the fact, that they set up for the next scene. Like then you don't have to go over the whole thing of they're looking for this symbol because you've already seen it. But
That's exactly it, and they did do that symbol well. And again, this episode, I don't know what it is. If maybe as we're getting in deeper, we're gonna have a few more axes to grind, or a few more things to kind of pull apart. And there was a few things in this that I was like, okay, that's really done well, but nah. And they're gonna come up as we go.
I think I think part of it is because it's been such a good series that like we have to look out for something to grind, because otherwise we're gonna feel like, yeah, okay, another great day. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
makes us a little bit more critical.
makes this more critical, and I think it also makes it easier to be critical because when you're dealing with a subject matter that is so well done and so expertly crafted, the little issues that do pop up are like nicks in a blade. You pull out your favorite chef's knife and you can immediately tell where there's a roll or there's a little chunk missing or something. And I think that's kind of the same thing with this. It's expertly crafted, and any rolls in the blade are going to pop out, and you're going to notice them all
Yeah.
that much better because
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
not shoddy piece of work. So we do have, and I actually don't really think of them as cold opens that much either, because I don't always watch through the credits, the opening credits. So I'll often skip them. So it's like from scene to scene, and it's kind of a steady flow straight through. But today I actually did watch and last week I watched the credits, and that's where I was like, oh yeah, that's actually the cold open as we go along. But then we jump into another fantastic start, and the Raven pulling at a chunk of flesh that I first thought was going to be someone from the rebellion that was caught up after the attack, like the Ravens had gone into the broken roof or something, but it wasn't. It was the bodies hanging, from the sun tree.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, it was quite the morsel that the Raven got too. That was a pretty good chunk.
They were freshly killed, so
they were. And that's one thing too, though. We don't really get too much of a sense of a timeline for that.
That's true.
They do look like there's some in the close-up. There is some decomposition. There is some that, and so we don't know how long they've been hanging in that tree for, waiting for them. But I don't think that's really important. I don't think that's the timeline that we need. But that is one thing I've noticed, and we talked about that last episode, is the timeline of Pike leaving and them leaving to come to Whitestone and all that stuff. There's no even concept offered of how long they've been traveling. Mm-hmm. How long have they been on the road? Like, we don't need to see the travels. We don't need to see what they're doing, but some kind of concept. Like, even like a flashback of, like, last week when we were traveling here, this is like, just, there's ways that you can tie it in. But again, it's not a big thing, but for someone who likes to know how a story is fully playing out, it can stand out. And then
add a little grossness to those bodies too.
Yeah.
If you know how long they've been hanging there, then when you see them, you're like, oh, that's really gross.
Yeah, exactly. And you can start thinking of the smell, and so they talk about, I think Keyleth talks about cutting them down, and Percy's got the really smart line where he's like, it's being watched. Like, obviously, this is a sign. If we go to take the sign down, then they're gonna know, like, they've got someone watching. But the giant tells us how they were hung there. That dude is massive. Yeah. He just kind of had to, like, hang in a Christmas ornament, and it was done.
Yeah, I kind of picture Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with the Bumble picking up an elf to hang the Christmas star.
Yeah, exactly. Very good angle on that. I like that. And then we have the ravens eating the bodies. And then we have the kids playing in the street when they walk away, and we see the kids playing in the street. And that was something that picked up to me, as I know in a lot of shows, ravens are oftentimes used as the eyes and ears of the enemy, or the antagonist, and the ravens appear quite a few times in this episode, where you see them lighting on something and watching the group go past. And so I made a note of, like, are these eyes and ears, or is there more to the ravens? But the other note that I made is when we see the kids playing with a raven in the street, or playing in the street, they're playing with a dead raven. So that immediately, to me, was, I couldn't see any form of injury on the raven. There wasn't any blood. It didn't look like his back was broken or his neck was broken or anything like that. So it struck me as, was this raven one of the ravens eating the dead bodies, and was it poisoned, and that's why it's dead? So were the bodies poisoned, or how? Because again, we don't know how they were all killed. This entire family or group of people were all murdered by the Briarwoods, and right now, to me, it kind of looks like maybe some kind of poison or some kind of dark magic that leaves some kind of effect.
I think that's a really good observation. I hadn't considered that the raven could have died from the poisoning that had killed the bodies, but I think that's very plausible. You pretty much have two choices just based on what we saw. The bodies didn't seem to have any wounds that were festering or dripping or had dry blood on them, so you would assume there's no blade or any actual physical damage to them. So you're looking at either Delilah's magic or poison, and I think poison's very plausible if you're seeing birds that eat the bodies dying.
Yeah, and because the thing with me was, it stood out. I mean, you can do a crow or a raven pulling at a dead body for a grotesque factor and being like this, amping up how nasty a scene is. But they don't tend to go that route with this show, and they do tend to hide a lot in plain sight. And so to see to start with this raven pulling at this chunk of flesh, and then the next scene you see one dead on the ground, seemed a little bit too connected for me to be just coincidental.
I think that's a really good observation. I hadn't even considered it. I recognize the ravens as symbols of death that we've been seeing kind of sprinkled throughout all the episodes and moved on.
Yeah. Well, and that's because they are definitely there. And then they get called, the whole group gets called off the street. And they get called off the street into the back alley by a person who calls the children off the street as well. And we come to see that they're part of the rebellion. And we have this beautiful thing between Scanlan and Grog with the... Grog, can you vouch for us? I was like, what? Because we're giant, we all fucking know each other?
Yeah, I think that's especially fun in this because that kind of racism trope is very prevalent in this type of tabletop game because all the different races have their own racial languages. You need usually a giant to speak giant. You need a dragonborn to speak dragon. So having that little nod to that and being like, that's a super racist thing that you just said, I think it's good.
Well, especially with the fact that they handle race and sexuality and all these other things so well, like we've discussed. Actually flash like the race card right blatantly. It really stands out. Really funny scene. Really makes a mark. But again, Scanlan doesn't back down. He's like, well, yeah, basically.
Yeah. Right? That's how it works.
Yeah, you all know each other. It's like being in Canada. Everyone thinks we all know each other.
Yeah. It's a tiny country.
Which, yeah, and I used to mess with people with that. When I was younger and more of a smartass than I am now. A different form of smartass than I am now. People were like, oh, you're from Canada? And this is also before the internet. And it's like, yeah, I'm from Canada. It's like, oh, do you know Dave? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dave's dead. I'm sorry, Dave's dead.
Nice.
But and then that was another thing that stuck out to me is this person grabs Percy and is like, why are you wearing these buttons? Are you part of the resistance? And that gives you the impression that the Derulo crest is on the buttons. And that rose another question for me of how? Percy left as a child. How does he have a jacket that has buttons with the Derulo emblem emblazed on them that fits a grown man? Unless he took the buttons from a previous jacket he had as a child and sewed them onto the new jacket, or when he left, he grabbed his dad's coat or something like that he's carrying. We don't know where he got his jacket from. But that was the thing that's kind of a little bit of a bump out of the story for me, which was, well, how did he get this? How did he have those emblems on those buttons?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question. I didn't latch on to the fact that it was buttons. I didn't notice that if that's what was said. I thought it was just a seal. I thought that he had a seal on his jacket or lapel pin or something like that, and that just happened to be what they caught, which is much easier to transfer from coat to coat. If it's his buttons, then yeah, that's a discrepancy that is a little tougher to swallow. I can't imagine, 16-year-old Percy changing his buttons over, and then 18-year-old Percy changing his buttons over again because he got a new coat, and then 21-year-old Percy doing it again.
Yeah. So I think part of me wants to say that they actually do say, like, your buttons are, like, why do you have that crest on your buttons? Or something along those lines. Just whatever it was, the very first time I saw it, it struck me as, it's his buttons that has it. I don't remember exactly what was phrased, but that's one of the things that stuck out to me. But yeah, I mean, it could have been grabbing his father's jacket on the way out, and that's what he wants to wear. And that would also make sense as to how readily he was recognized at the dinner party. If you're wearing a jacket that has the crest of the family that the vampires have killed, it's like, oh, you belong to them, don't you?
Even if that's you don't interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in a while.
Which all just makes me believe that I was thinking about this a while ago, or like 2 years ago, that we got to bring back family crests.
Oh yeah,
Like that would be so amazing. Like even like or like the signet rings and that kind of stuff. Like especially
yeah,
if I'm
wax
doing the
seal
wax
everything.
seal stuff, right?
I don't want my bills coming digitally. I want them coming by Raven with a wax seal.
See, I haven't trained the ravens yet, but I do. That is the one of the selling features of my company is that everything, any correspondence you get that's written correspondence comes with a wax seal. And because
Oh,
I've
I thought
actually
you were
got,
gonna say comes by Raven.
I'm working on that. They won't cooperate. I'm still training them to be close to me, but I've got a whole kit down here of stamps and different waxes and all this stuff to do proper wax sealing.
Very cool.
I've been doing that for many many years, and I think it's a fantastic art form. But they do have so they have the are you a part of the resistance, and then they have this conversation of we don't know what the resistance is, and Percy asks for Keeper Yenin as what's happening. So what are your thoughts on that whole scene in the alleyway with the person from the
Um,
resistance? I don't think we ever get that person's name.
yeah, I'm trying to think of the whole episode. I don't think we ever get any kind of referral to who that person is, besides just being a Resistance member who you continue to see throughout the episode.
Yeah, they weren't even listed in the
Um,
X-ray.
yeah. Um, I mean, until you brought up the discrepancy with possibly the buttons, I didn't have a problem with the scene. I thought the scene flowed very, very well, and was balanced very nicely by the first scene that we had prior to the opening credits. So I thought it was good. I thought it was quick, and then we move on and get to the heart of the episode.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing is that they do so well with pacing in a lot of this stuff where
Yep.
again so much information was traded in a short period of time and you don't feel like you're being given enough information overload or an info dump, and even though the action can be fast paced they still have these rest moments, these pauses that actually do feel like a rest moment, actually does feel like a pause. And even in that when
Yep.
there's the frantic thing of the opening, then the bodies and the running away from the bodies and then pulled off, and then there's like a pause of that, like this conversation is not too built up, and so they end up being told or saying that they're going to find Keeper Yenin, and they go off to find Keeper Yenin, who is doing a sermon on patience and lack of anger.
Yeah, some really some interesting things to be teaching when you're expected to be the person that's going to save the town. Don't
Yeah.
fight, quell your anger. Everything will be fine in the future, just not now.
Well, my first go through, I was kind of the same thing. I was like, "That's really a bizarre kind of thing." And then when Percy has a conversation, and she says the Pale Guards tolerate her. My second viewing through, I watched that scene more because it didn't sit well with me. There was something that wasn't right, and I picked up on it. It was the fact that when Keeper Yenin is talking, she's doing the sermon, and she says, "Patience." Fire doesn't, or anger doesn't do any good. It just creates more smoke. It doesn't clear the situation, doesn't make the situation any better. And then she pauses and looks over her shoulder, and there's two guards standing right beside her. And then those guards kind of nod, turn, and walk away. And as soon as the guards walk away, then she turns back to the crowd and says, "But tomorrow will bring us a brighter future, and there is a symbol and a sign of hope coming." So to me, that kind of struck me as the first half was for the guards. And then they're like, "Oh, okay, she's not trying to rebel rouse, she's fine." And they walk off, and then she's like, "But actually, there's going to be something happening, so get ready."
That's interesting and an interesting take on it. I thought because of like the mutual nodding of like yeah, I thought the guards were leaving on purpose. I thought they were leaving to have plausible deniability of what she was saying next. But that's
Could
yeah.
have been. But
Either
either way,
way,
there was two
guards
sides
leave.
to that.
Yeah.
There was two sides to that conversation, or to her sermon. So there was the one of the like everything's going to be okay, and then, but, it's there's something coming.
So there's a this scene and future scenes that involve some of these characters really make me wonder, who are the guards in this town? Are these townspeople that have now become guards underneath the Briarwoods, or is it an army that they've created from the undead? Or they, well, I really wonder who these people are and their affiliation with the town.
Yeah, because I kind of had that same question because of the fact that they have Keeper Yenin refers to them as the Briarwood's Pale Guards.
Yeah.
But when we see the guards, because there is a scene, especially with the backdoor entrance scene, we see the guards' face, and they're human. They're not
human. Yeah.
They're not undead. They're not like, they make pretty clear when someone's undead. They do a pretty damn good job of showing blood dripping off and all this other stuff, and so they don't strike me as undead. They might be under some kind of control, but they seem like regular humans, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I've it's been a constant like thing that I've been wondering in these past few episodes is like, who are these people and how are they under the thumb? And that exchange with Keeper Yenin and my assumption that it was, yep, okay, do your thing, I'm gonna walk away. I thought that they were maybe, under duress. They're working for the Briarwoods under duress.
Yeah.
Like they have to do what they say, but they don't necessarily want to kill her. She's beloved.
And perhaps, I mean, everybody knows everybody in this town, and perhaps there is some moment of hope that when things actually hit the fan, then some of the guards are going to turn and fight on the right side of things. Because, yeah, even with the battle scenes that we see later on, the guards aren't full-hearted running in and trying to crush everyone. Like, there's so many times where I'm like, how did they just run past all those people?
Right.
Just run. Yeah. There's a scene where the one person like runs through all these guards to kill one guard, and it's like, how the other guards just not like, oh, okay. And again, it seemed like the giant was the real crusher behind all of this.
The real threat.
Yeah. So we do see that conversation, and then they have a meeting in the alley with Keeper Yenin where she reconnects with Percy and is somehow shocked that he looks different after. I think it's more that he's a different personality, and he's probably hardened and a lot different of a person than he was as a child when he left.
Yeah, I imagined it was the spiritual "you're different," like you're holding a lot of anger, my dear boy.
Yeah, you're bigger, you're angrier, you look like you've been through some stuff.
Yeah, I see a Plague Doctor mask in your back pocket.
Yeah, I love that came back. I've been waiting for that. The Giants and the Plague Doctor mask. It was what I was really waiting for. But then there is this conversation of, as the Dawn, or as he says to get the conversation started, the Dawn Father, as you honestly believe the Dawn Father is coming as was foretold, and that's a forbidden thing, and then So I like that. There's the Whispered One, there's the Dawn Father, there's all of these things that are being brought up in the Everlight that are just ethereal creatures or beings that we don't know about, that are just kind of there. And we're going to learn more about as we go along, obviously.
Maybe. I don't know.
You would think. I mean, this stuff is... And that's the thing that came to me was the Dawn Father. Is that actually like a ethereal being, or is that the foretold one of like Percy being the Dawn Father coming, the one that's going to be the savior that's going to come and with the rising of the dawn and save everything, or how that's going to work? We'll have to see how that plays out.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I try to come up with good questions once in a while. And then, of course, we have the conversation of you're the rightful heir, and the fantastic leader argument of, you knew that argument had to come up at some point, of who's the leader of the group.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for that argument to come up. I'm honest, I hadn't really thought of it, but I at this point in the campaign, I had seen them together for like 100 hours, so I didn't think anything of it. But when the fight started, it's hilarious. It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, it's just Grog, like, it's the first time you see Grog actually being, like, not talking down to someone, but not being nice to someone. Where he's like, "Oh, Percy, you're too little to be the leader." It's like, Grog.
Get out of here,
And then
Grog.
Scanlan with the height requirement. But that was the thing. I kind of took the same thing as, like, they all just, you see some groups that don't really have a de facto leader. There's just people have different strengths, and when those strengths come to pass, then they rise and kind of shine a little bit more. And I was kind of saw this group as that way as well, as no actual leader to it.
I mean, if you're gonna go with leader, I have to go with group mom Vex. Honestly, she
Yeah.
seems to be the one that has the best head on her shoulder most of the time. But
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Like, that's the one that, I mean, if just the fact that she has a group mom kind of gives the thing, and she does tend to lead more of the conversations when they're coming up to plan things. It's usually her that's
Yep.
telling people to sit down, shut up, pay attention, give your opinion, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, if anyone, I would agree. If anyone is leader, it would be Vex. And funny enough, she was one of the only ones that didn't say much of anything during that argument.
yeah, her and Vex just kind of said, "Well, fuck you." That was it.
Yeah. And then they go into the shitty tavern.
Yes, the one that looked shitty from the outside, but it's much better in the inside.
It's still shitty inside. And then Grog with the alcohol, with the what fresh hell is this? Yeah, there's so many, for such a serious episode. There's so many funny scenes pinpointed through it.
Yeah, and the funny scenes didn't detract from the seriousness. If anything, it just gave you that respite for a beat or two before you had to get back into, like, the people are really, really fucking dying here.
Yeah, this is a really serious thing, and again, that just kind of like it allows us to. Those scenes aren't just a point of a respite, and they're not just a point of like deflating the tension a little bit. They all carry and further the characters of the characters that are involved in it. So we see Scanlan being like, "Nope, still shitty inside. Like, don't care what you say." And then we see Grog being still the murder hobo, where he throws a barrel across the room. He's like, "I'm gonna murder everybody, or I'm gonna kill everybody." And it's like, so Grog is tuned up and ready to go, and for this, and Scanlan's still being Scanlan, and we get to see that these are true to form character traits. We get to see little flashes of the character traits as we go along, which is nice. It just reminds you of who everybody is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice too because it feels like in all these episodes, everyone is getting a chance to shine in some way, whether it be it being comic relief or being the emotional foil or being the driving force that's pushing the plot along, like Percy is most of the time. Like, you never feel like someone is being truly left behind. Except maybe Pike.
Yeah.
That's something different. But I liked that, and this was one of those opportunities where you got to have everyone involved and like have something poignant to say.
Exactly. And even if they're not involved fully, we do have their involvement in some form. Like in this thing, we have the keeper saying that a charge is going to be slaughtered. If you try to charge the castle, everyone's going to die. And then
Yep.
that's where we just have Vax with a little, well, there it is. Just a little
all right.
clip again. So that's that Vax's thing. But again, on the back end, another, to me, a little bit of foreshadowing, because you see how terrible Whitestone is and how it's been just shattered and everything is dead and dark and gray and the Sun Tree is dead. Then we see Keyleth find the roots to the Sun Tree, and she's just about to have this moment. She's just about to try to connect with it, which gets interrupted in a hilarious form, but she's about to connect with it. And to me, that was foreshadowing, like, okay, well, when they do defeat the Priorwoods, everything is going to come back. Keyleth is going to be the key to bringing Green back, to bringing the Sun Tree back, to bringing life back to Whitestone. Is what
LJ
looks to
is
me
not
like the foreshadowing.
LJ is not going to be happy about hearing that because
No.
she thinks that Keyleth is too powerful as it is.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but it just struck me, that scene just kind of struck me as like, oh, okay, so she is not fully the leader healer type that we kind of saw with Pike, but she is. I think that's going to be her shining moment of everything, and that's where, because she has to go through this test to prove herself, right? And what better way to prove yourself than saving a sun tree that's been dead for 15 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, or whatever it is, and bringing life and greenery back to an entire place. I think that would be a
correct
good...
me if I'm wrong. We don't have any type of timeline. They haven't said how long it actually has been since Percy left, or since the Briarwoods took over, or any of that.
No.
As far as I know.
No, there's been no... that's the thing, like I was saying, that they really don't have any timelines for anything in this. We just know that Percy was a kid when it happened. And... yeah, I don't... like, he's an adult. Because we all... the other thing, too, is we don't even know what their ages are. We don't even have an idea. Especially with a gnome, it's going to be kind of hard to pick an age. Just by looking at them. So, yeah, we really don't... and elves as well, or half-elves. The same thing, we really don't have a concept of how old anyone is in any of this stuff, so that breaks it up. But in a way, it's a little bit refreshing, because you're not... if you have a timeline, then you can be distracted by making sure the timeline lines up and everything falls in place and it makes sense. If you don't have a timeline, it's distracting in the sense that there is no timeline, and that can be a little bit irksome, but it's non-distracting in the sense that you're not trying to see how everything lines up in the timeline.
Sure, yeah.
Right? But so the charge will be slaughtered, and then we have the resistance leader. We find out Archie has been captured, and this great conversation. This little thing of more backstory of Percy, and I really appreciated that little thing, because I had friends like that growing up that we used to go and raise hell all over the place. And yeah, to me, when he explained what Archie was like, and he was like, he's the leader of the rebellion, to me I was like, yeah, he's been a little rebel his entire life. He's been going stirring shit the entire life with you. Like, how are you surprised that when things go sideways, that he's the one that steps up and takes charge?
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like it would literally be his second nature to do that. But at the same time, I understood the thought process behind it of, he's too much of a troublemaker to be a leader.
And too immature.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I agree. It seems like it should be second nature. I would have been like, yeah, dude, you're not there. Who else would it have been?
Yeah, exactly. And I love the fact that we go from like Archibald to Archie. Like, there's points where we've got the where he needs kind of respect or whatever, he's being called Archibald, and when it's people that know him really well, whatever, it's just Archie. It's a nice level of connection they have there. But we find out that Archie's been captured, and Scanlan wants to become Scanlan the what was it?
Revolutionary.
Scanlan the Revolutionary. And that was the other question. He's like, I can get a beret. And then he has a beret. I'm like, where the hell did you get the beret from?
It's a magic beret.
Apparently. It just comes up. And that's a big thing that I wanted. I've got some stuff to talk about with Scanlan today. I noticed a few things with Scanlan.
And
I don't know if that's leading to something, but we're going to get into that. And then we have... so we find out the resistance leader's been captured. They have to come up with some kind of plan to save him. And Grog interrupts Keyleth trying to connect with the tree. And that whole scene, I was so invested in that scene. I was like, is she like going to connect, and like what's she going to hear and what's she going to say? And is this going to be like a sign of life that, all of a sudden the tree is going to start coming back, and everyone's going to be like, these are the people that are here to save us, and there's a sign of glory to that's where everything is going to be okay. That's the sign we've been looking for. And then Grog swoops in and grabs her and runs into the conversation with perfect timing.
It was adorable, to say the least. A big Grogism right there.
Yeah. They've done such a good character with Grog. And then that's where I found this time they did a fantastic job of segueing into Pike, because like, we're gonna need luck, you're gonna need more than luck, you're gonna need a healer or whatever it was. And he's like, actually, well, our healer's not really with us right now. And then we go over to Pike.
Yeah, I agree. This was the transition that I wanted in the last, was it the last episode? Maybe 2 episodes ago? No, last episode. this was the transition that I wanted, and we got it here, and I felt a lot better about that. I was just disappointed with the substance that came afterwards. So we see Pike in the Shadow Realm, the Nightmare Realm, the
I think it's supposed to be her meditation realm, but it's become the Nightmare Shadow because of the taint from uh, Lady Briarwood's magic.
right, and she's attempting to connect with um, the Everlight, and it's just not working. But and then we have the quick scene where she speaks to the religious leader, nun, whoever the woman actually is, where she explains that there's nothing blocking her from talking to the Everlight except for herself.
Yeah, and that was a nice scene. And I don't know if I'm reading too much of the animation or not, but when that scene where she's looking forward and that's close up on her face and she's like, "So it's within me is the problem," that struck me as very much like it actually brought to mind Astro Boy, because the old
Okay.
Astro Boy cartoon, that's you'd get a lot of those close up side shots and like the eyes starting to quiver and like the upset. I mean, that's an anime thing that we see as well.
Yeah.
But
I
for whatever reason it brought Astro Boy to me, is because I know they are paying homage to a lot of different things, but it was also like her features
Yep.
were more angular than they normally are in that scene.
Yeah, I thought the animation style, especially in that scene, was very nice, good. Like I there's if there's one thing that I can't complain about so far in the series, like I have no reason to complain about the style that they've been using for any of the scenes, even when they mix up kind of the two styles, like we saw in the first episode or two, where you had the very distinct, like very anime faces in the middle of the throne room. Like all of it has been very seamless and or very touching representations of other styles, or just plain well done.
Yeah.
So that's definitely not what I'm getting on with any of this.
Well, yeah, the Easter eggs, the hidden things they've got factored into this, the hidden like nods to different things are just absolutely beautiful. And there's so much more richness and adds so much more to the replayability or reviewability of the show, because there's so many things to pick up on. And I know once I watch everything, I'm going to look up what some of these things are that I've missed and go back and try to find them. But one thing that did strike me in Pike's scene and the rest of the show is when they come into Whitestone for the first time, everything is dead, black, burned out, scorched, everything is kind of gone.
Mm-hmm.
And when Pike is trying to reach Everlight, she's all of a sudden engulfed in flames. And then there was another scene where I can't remember what it was, but there's another scene where something is engulfed in flames. And then when they finish the battle, when they're trying to free Archie, they're all walking away, and Percy stops and looks back, and that whole entire building is engulfed in flames. There's a lot of flame symbolism in this episode, and leading up to this episode, where fire was like heavily leaned on fire and flames.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of I'm gonna call it baptism by fire imagery going on. A lot of fire bringing something anew,
Yeah,
like the scene or shot of Percy looking back, and that whole building's up in flames. That kind of leads credence to it. Of we fix that, now it's all up in flames. Now it's ready for something new.
it's the cleansing flames
Yeah.
of things.
Yep.
Except for Pike, who's not like, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe she needs to give herself into the flames and give herself. Maybe that's a sign that she's not fully given herself over to her order and to what she needs, and she does need to go through that baptism of fire. She does need to actually, instead of fearing the flames and shutting them out, be with them.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But that just the fire symbolism really spoke to me this time around. And then we jump into this beautiful torture scene, and I have to say I love who they have voicing the Duke.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah,
did
absolutely.
no, I was not expecting. I can't remember his name, but for those of you who don't know, it's the person that voices the Duke is the same gentleman who played the Hound in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Rory McClellan, something very Scottish, I believe.
Yeah, and a great, great choice for this character.
Yeah, I agree, and I find it very amusing because man, he's a talented dude. He was real talented in Game of Thrones. He's absolutely amazing as the Duke.
Yeah, and it's great to see like that. It's really is an all star cast that they have
Yep.
for this. It's I've been just stunned, and it's not to say that like, any other stars are going to rise because they've already risen, but they're going to shine a hell of a lot more brightly after all of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't. I mean, if you don't like cartoons, if you don't like D&D, if you don't like fantasy, if you don't like that kind of stuff, then yeah, you can easily turn a blind eye to it. But anybody who actually watches or gives the show a chance is going to be astounded by what they see. And we're only halfway through it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the really interesting things is that this is episode 6. We're at the halfway point of this show, and I just want more. Give me more. I need more. Give me the end of this.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I really want to sit down and finally watch through all of this, but I've just been so busy with everything
Tell me
that I
about it.
just don't have that opportunity. Again, a lot of it comes down to a teething child.
Good times.
Yeah. But then the Archie torture scene was really well done. I found we get to see Stonefell laying in on Archie, and
Yep.
I liked the fact that he doesn't spit in Stonefell's face. Maybe he was aiming and he missed, but he hit Stonefell's chest. And then again, that just grotesqueness. I really like Stonefell in the sense that in the characters that I've written, I some of my enemies are purposefully just disgusting and grotesque, and like not only do you hate them, but as soon as they walk into the scene, your stomach lurches. And
Hmm.
Stonefell is one of those. And the fact that just the look of him and the pallid gray skin and short, fat, stumpy kind of creature, and then with the fact that he takes the blood and spit and licks it, is just adds so much. Like there's just puts the exclamation mark on that character, and I thought they did a fantastic job with it.
Yeah, he's a gross guy. And you definitely just continue to get that, even with his brutality.
Yeah,
Um, People will stab someone, people will cut a person, do anything to survive or win a battle, and he really relishes in like destroying a person, smashing their skull in, and then laughing. Uh,
yeah. He definitely is
Deranged.
brutal. He is definitely. I had brutal's a good word. I was the term that I had down for him was. I think it's coming up later on, but we get to see just how. Yeah, I think brutal is the better way of putting it. But just how much he relishes in violence, and it's just he's a yeah all around a horrible creature.
Yeah,
uh,
sadistic.
yeah. But again, with that torture scene, then he's got this thing, and then he calls in the Duke, who is again the character design in these
So cool.
is just so well done. And the Duke is like my first thing was like, oh, is he half giant as well? Because he looked to be about Grog's size, if not bigger.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I did do some research into some of these characters out of curiosity for how they looked. In my memory of the campaign, which is pretty foggy at the moment, everyone I was human. It was just kind of human with different features. And in what we're seeing visualized, it definitely looks like these are either different races or mutation isn't quite the word I'm looking for, but like the twisting of evil energies or whatever it is that's going on, I don't know. But they don't look like typical humans that are walking around in Whitestone for sure.
Yeah, because I even found in the battle scene in the hallway that's coming up, when they're on the stairs, and the camera pans across the stairs, and there's someone standing there, and one of the people that have been let out of the prison almost looks orcish or goblinish. Like it's got like a humanoid face, but then he has the fangs that's coming up and then like out of the bottom jaw.
Yep.
That struck me as kind of like, okay, that's
That's not a human.
not a human. That's in there. There is a mix, but I like the fact that they do have this blend of races and there's creatures, and that thing is just our. They coexist. This is our reality, and
Yep.
I do like having worlds where being a different race species isn't a shocking thing to people. It's just, yeah, we have vampires and this is what happens with
Right.
it.
Yeah. This is what we have to do.
Yeah. But we have that part, and then so the Duke comes in and starts roughing him up, and
Roughing him up.
yeah. But I think is that, yeah, so the Duke first comes in, and that was the scene that I really liked. Same as the end of the last episode, where they see the tree, everything goes black, and then you hear Keyleth say, "That's us." And it's such a poignant, impactful scene and moment in that. And then in this one, we get to see the torture start, and he's like, "I just want to have a conversation with you. I've got one, like, hopefully we can chat, and it's going to go a lot easier."
Yeah.
And you see him starting to tear the ear. But then the scene, it doesn't go to black, but then the scene switches, and you just hear the rest of it. So they don't go overboard, they don't show blood splattering, they don't see the ear getting ripped off and flailing around. And it is so much more impactful. Because if you see that, you turn your head and you're like, ah. But the fact that it goes to a normal scene, it was outside the castle or something, and then you just hear this wet, rending sound of the flesh being torn. And it was just such, again, the impact of the way they did it, to me, stood out really strongly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was fully prepared for that to be real gross. And it was just so much stronger with the pan away and the sound effect. It definitely, the point got across.
Definitely. Yeah, it did. So, and it pans away and cuts to the planning session. What are your thoughts on their planning session?
The planning session when we have Scanlan the Revolutionary and
Keyleth and Grog coming up with their fantabulous ideas.
So when I originally saw this this scene, I was upset because I was afraid that they were going to skip over some things, and I'm excited that they didn't. I won't get into details right now, but I'm very excited. I really liked the scene. I liked the little caricatures, and I don't know if you noticed Scanlan the Revolutionary's giant hog in his pants that turns into a third leg when he is on the board.
Kind of hard not to notice that.
But I thought it was a lot of fun, and I especially like Grog's plan.
I love Grog. Well, that's the thing. The plans really were bang on to their personalities.
Yep.
They don't waver on who the characters are or what the personalities are. They don't change them to fit a scene. They are who they are, even if it's not appropriate to a scene, which for this one it totally was. But yeah, Grog's plan is like, we're going to kill everybody. What about Archie? I will kill him too.
All done. It was mine.
Yeah. But it was, I thought all ideas had some kind of merit to them.
Sure.
I don't know if Keyleth's abilities do get to the point that she can send a squirrel into a room by itself to go grab guard's keys and let someone out, but she seemed
honestly, if she could do that, that's a pretty brilliant way to do it.
Yeah, it's like sending drones.
Give Keyleth a chance.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see that idea kind of play out to see, and then that actually got me kind of thinking, like, what else can she do? Like, we've seen her throw out a bridge across a gap and stuff. Like, how does she not just? I mean, maybe it's because all the trees are dead and everything that she maybe she can't do that, but how is she not just gone and like made a tree, like grab the briarwoods and rip them apart, or
Right. Yeah.
just rip the roof off a castle or something.
Yeah. Out of all the plans, though, I really wanted to see Scanlan's plan. I want to see him take 18 potions and turn into Scanbo and go in there and rip everyone's head off. But
Yeah, and do it with two adoring ladies by his side.
exactly. Yeah. How could I forget that part?
Yeah, but yeah, that scene where he turns into the one man army and then his pants drop down. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I think that's a little excessive there.
No.
I don't think you'd be doing too much with that. But yeah, the potions and the one man army was awesome. And then I love the response, because that's one of the things I love saying to people. I can't remember, it's from a movie I got it from a long time ago. It's like, that's a bad plan and you should feel bad.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that
No.
line, and it's to the point and very clear. And then Vex with the, we get in, we get out, we finish it, and like a dagger.
Yeah.
Like,
Group mom.
yeah, and again, like, and then Vex, when she says, like a dagger, like a well thrown dagger, and Vex is like, oh, I can get behind that. Again, Vex and Vex don't have a lot in this episode. Like, a lot of Vex more so once they get in, but they're more secondary characters and quieter in this episode than they have been in others.
Yeah, well, it's tough when you can recognize when dragons are near you, but no one in this town appears to be dragon in nature. So Vax is kind of turned into just the archer.
Yeah, and Group Mom. And that's where
And
I
Group Mom.
am still kind of curious as to what my forecast was. Like, was the dragon just this is who we are, this is what our abilities are, and this is how we've come to be, and let's move forward with it, and now we're going to enter into a brand new storyline, like we're this little mini mission and then jumping into the real thing? Or is this all going to tie back somehow to being connected to dragons and all
Right.
the Whispered One and all the stuff that's coming through? Either way, I think it's fantastic, and I would be really excited if the dragons, as much as I love them, if they don't come back, because that's a great method I always talk to people about. Is you have to make us know who the characters are, you have to make us care about them, and what better way than to have a 2-part episode where they go and they fight and kill a dragon, and you see all the interactions and how they are connected and all of the little rows and disputes and stuff that they have within each other. It was fantastically done. So if the dragons never come
Yeah, I
back,
agree.
I would still be happy. I'd be sad not to see them again because they're so well designed, but I would still be happy with how that opened up, and not like, I don't think it'd be cool to have them come back. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then we get to the Duke, back with the Duke, with the whole, I have one question for you. Where is Vox Machina? And Archibald's, what is a Vox Machina?
That's everyone's question, Archie.
Yeah. And I like the fact too that they've alluded to it when they're in the episode 1, when they're in front of the Sovereign, and he's like, that's actually Vox Machina, it's a play on, he's like, nobody cares, and he's like, oh, okay. And I like it when
okay.
shows do that, where they lead up to something and then walk away from it incessantly. But yeah, so we see that the Duke is going after Archie, and what do you think of his torture techniques?
I mean, like I said, it's effective. He beats / tortures Archie so much that he passes out, and he's glad about that. Tell me when he wakes up so I can do it again.
Yeah.
Effective, I guess.
It takes some time to break someone. And again, it shows, I like the subtle shows of strength that they do in this, and of abilities. And the fact that, when he first comes in, he picks him up and grabs him by the neck, and then tears his ear off, like casually, like a wing off a fly.
Jeez.
And then with this, he doesn't just like smash him in the head to knock him out, he just almost puts him through the stone wall, which, as we've discussed, and I don't think this is something that Critical Role would walk away from. Castle walls are thick. They're like 6 foot thick stone walls usually. So if you're being put into a wall like that, there's some force being put behind it.
It's not going to feel good.
Yeah. I'm surprised he's still breathing. And apparently so was Stonefell. His reaction was like, why'd you kill him?
You killed him!
But again, with the transitions, every episode has at least one phenomenal transition. And I found that for this episode, that was the transition. Where there's a close in on Stonefell's face, and then it backs up, and we see that it's actually Percy using the looking glass gun thing that he has. Pepperbox.
Yeah, the bad news.
Yeah. And again, a bag of plenty. They haven't brought up the bag of plenty before, have they? In this show?
They haven't specifically talked about it or how it works or anything. I think this is the first time we've actually seen it in a way that makes sense, that shows what it is. But
yeah, because I mean, anyone who's familiar with fantasy or especially D&D, they know what a bag of plenty is. Whether it's food, whether it's weapons, whether it's whatever, it's just it can hold a house inside of it, and you walk away with it on your head. And I thought, again, that was a great thing. They actually showed the bag kind of expand and then pop back. Like, not too much of an expansion, just a little bit of a pop back. And it's the same thing when we have Gilmore pulling stuff up, where, he takes that dragon lance and it appears and he tucks it under the counter and it kind of like and fits. So they've got this real subtle way of showing how things can move and how you can go through. A mission. But then also begs other questions. I mean, I guess it does beg other questions. Like, then if that's the case, if they've got a bag of plenty, then what happened with the holy water?
Well, yes. I think that's a perfectly reasonable question. It could be a matter of if one person has that bag and has all the things in it, then it's going to be harder to get stuff out of it if you're in combat and you need it.
That's true.
So these things that they were going to use to protect from the arrows, the holy water, they wanted them to be at hand.
And you can spill them out of the bag by dumping it quickly.
Right. And throw those things around, do the things. You don't have to reach into one person's bag or rely on one person to get the thing out.
Yeah.
Also, at this point, it seems like it's Percy's bag. So
yeah, and explains how we've never seen the mask.
Right. He might not be sharing it.
That's very true too. But it shows that that also explains how he carries the mask about that we don't see. Because that's not exactly a foldable, a collapsible small thing.
Right. And it's not fitting in his back pocket as much as I say it is.
But yeah, so we get to see the bad news and the really awesome. I love how they did that just with because again, it's his technology. They didn't just come up with, he's got this looking glass that pops out and goes. It's like, no, it's different lenses that pop up for the further you need to see and the more you need to bring something into focus. It's just so beautifully designed as a tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just really interesting how they've brought that into the setting, because something like the bad news or the pepper box, that's not stereotypical high fantasy weaponry.
Yeah,
it just isn't. So having it there, making it unreliable yet still powerful, makes it very interesting in this setting.
Yeah, it does. But that's the thing I've noticed with the pepper box, though, is that it's when it matters, it works. There's been very few times that he's pulled the trigger when he actually needed it, and it's failed and left him in a bad spot. And which is a good thing. So we see, and actually in this episode, so that's the thing because we're going to be getting into it, so I'm going to talk about my issue with Scanlan, or not my issue, but my point with Scanlan right now, is the fact that in this episode we see the pepper box and all of Percy's tools and equipment go off without a hitch. Everything works perfectly.
Yep.
The way it's designed to work, the way it should work is beautiful. I love the lenses, like they don't just all flick in. Again, it's the pattern as it rolls back. I love that kind of correlation to things.
Yep.
But with Scanlan, apart from his illusionary magic that he uses, every spell he casts fails this episode. So when they're trying to break into the back door and use the Scanlan fart, it doesn't work. When he tries to use the new electricity thing that he has with Grog in the hallway when they're battling, it doesn't work. And there's another one. So there's 3 times that Scanlan tried to use, for lack of a better term, an expulsionary magic, and it has failed in its impact and didn't deliver the results that they needed or to help them out in the way they needed. So everything of Percy's worked perfectly, and almost everything of Scanlan's fell short in this episode.
Yeah, that I think is a very important thing to notice, and does have some things to do with D&D as a whole. Just like I was talking about how like druids, man, they just got so much power. Like you never know what they're gonna pull out, and there's even more that Keyleth could potentially do in the future than she can even do now. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The thing about bards is that they're good at everything, but not great at anything. So the fact that his magic is failing so much makes sense because from a technical side, because they can do magic, but not necessarily good magic at any time. Yeah. It's really luck based.
But it seems to be that this is the first time we really see a lot of failure for him.
Right. And I think that will be an important thing to pay attention to going forward.
Yep. And that's good that you confirm my thought on that, because that's something I do strongly coach people on, is when you're writing a character, you can't have them be a god character. Because they're god, they very quickly, people don't care. Because as soon as they go into a scene, like they say in Batman, we fall down to learn how to pick ourselves back up, and there's no learning lessons if you plow through everything and everyone you come across you destroy them. And then it gets to a point where there's no tension, because anytime, no matter how powerful the being is that you're facing them, then they're going to win, so it doesn't matter, so why am I going to get concerned about this? And it takes away from the story. And but I also really like the idea of like they did really well with Vox Machina, is you introduce the characters, you introduce their abilities, and then you show those abilities failing them.
Yep.
And I find they do that really well with they pepper it in. It's not even like a try fail cycle. It's like success, 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 fail, fail, success, fail, 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 success, success, and it goes through like they do it masterfully in this in the writing for this. So we do see new technology, and then they decide to split the party, front door, back door. Like the note that I had for that was, why doors? Like why doors? Why split it front door, back door?
I told you guys at the beginning of this to keep an eye out on the door problems.
Yes, and I love
it. Boy, does it come full circle today.
Oh, it's such a good job with it. And again, keeping in mind and knowing how D&D works and the rolls and the luck and all this other stuff, it's awesome. Like you can actually see the gameplay from the table playing out in the show, which is really, why is she awake? Which is really exciting. But as Scanlan's like, I love the way he phrased it. I didn't write down the exact phrasing, but like the question that he had was, when is splitting up the party ever worked for us? And Vex's answer was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I can't remember what the actual answer was, but
shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, good point.
Okay, sure. It's so classic because it's the classic D&D don't split the party thing, but also doors. It's just such a perfect storm of like bullshit. Like, good job. Yeah,
it was awesome. But yeah, the front door, back door. Vex and Grog get in really quick with the distraction and the kill. I think that's the first time we've actually seen Vex use her sex appeal in this. And that was very subtle, flirtatious thing. Like just just, and they could have drawn that scene out. They could have made it so much more excessive than it needed to be, but it was just this really quick, like, hey boys, and then smash. And Grog smash.
And I think that's good, and especially important to her character because, sure, the character uses that to her advantage, but we don't want Vex to become over-sexualized. So making sure that it doesn't go, like, really overboard and doesn't become this 5-minute gag, I think was really important to this story.
I think so. They could have easily gone the Jumanji route with the dancing in front of the guards and all that stuff, and like really amping up that whole thing, and it doesn't fit. Scanlan's the sexual character.
Yes. Oh yes.
And I love the fact that it is actually Scanlan that they used as that they chose to be or became the sexualized character in the story. It was really well done. But then we have my next note is the fucking doors.
Because the boys in the back, boy, the boys in the back door are having a much harder time getting through, and after breaking lockpicks, after kicking it magically, they can't get it open, and they just exclaim, "Fucking doors!" And then Percy falls off of the top of the building because he was trying to sneak in through a window.
Come in through a window. It is. But I mean, isn't it always a little bit more difficult trying to get into the back door? So.
I mean, not usually for Scanlan, but.
But I just love the fact that how they did that. We have the fucking doors, Keyleth, save everyone in the prisons. This is going to be a cursed door. I'm going to go through a window. The rebels start fighting against the guards, and then Scanlan and Vox get into a slap fight with each other. Or Vax get into a slap fight with each other, and then Percy falls out the window, and then they get a bucket of piss thrown on them. Like, just the rapid fire of, like, this is going so smoothly, and look at this clusterfuck. And back and forth was beautifully done.
And then they get in, but they're covered in piss.
But again, they do that so well with so Keyleth insisting that they save everyone, and they do, which is a fantastic thing. Because, I mean, yeah, let everyone out on bad behavior because you're about to storm a castle full of guards. You at least want fodder. Like, you want other people that can go and help you blaze a path through and even the odds a little bit, right?
And get revenge.
Yeah. And then we have the guard fight at the bottom of the stairs where we see that orc creature person standing there that we referred to earlier. And then I love that. What's with all this crowd? Oh, we picked them up along the way. What do you smell like piss?
Yeah.
Picked it up along the way. The rat-a-tat-tat I find between the characters can be really good sometimes. Like,
yeah,
they've got
so
really
quick
good
and quippy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it. And then Percy sees Archie and Vax basically blows on the cell door and it pops open. He's like,
and goes, that's what's supposed to happen.
Well, I mean, that was the first time I've seen that back door. Was the first time I saw in this series Vax have trouble with the door. Every door he's picked relatively quickly. This is the first one that he actually struggled with, and then the cell was the fastest he's ever picked anything, which is surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually supposed to be able to, like, he's the one that's supposed to be able to do it. If everyone else has trouble with it, like Grog, because all he wants to do is bust them in, like, okay, sure. The rogue should be able to pick the lock.
Yep.
Not that back door.
Nope, not at all. And Scanlan ends up with bloody fingers and covered in piss, and it's just... It was not a good day for him.
Bad day for Scanlan.
Well, I mean, we don't know what his things are. It may not have been that bad of a day. He may have been into a little bit of pain. Right? He didn't seem too upset when his fingers were cut.
Sure. You make a valid point. Would have been a bad day for me.
Yeah, definitely. And having Percy land on you.
Yep.
So they break everyone out, and then they hit a wave of guards. Stonefall arrives with guards. They break out Archie. Stonefellow arrives with the guards, and then we see Scanlan is captured, and the order is to kill him. And that's where we see some quick thinking and very, very functional magic on Scanlan's part.
Yeah. We also get to see the nameless soldier that we've been seeing a number of times in this episode come through with a defensive catch to protect Scanlan as well. But things really don't end up working out for them.
Yeah. Not quite so well for them. And then, yeah, there's this beautiful fight scene. And that was the thing that struck me with the fight scene, though, is that we see them, like I saw, like they're running through, like running past the guards. And the guards really didn't seem to have their whole into it. They almost seemed like they were on their back foot, more defending themselves so they didn't die rather than actively trying to kill anybody.
Yeah, and that's just one of those instances where I question like who these guards are and what their motives are, because they weren't fighting with the tenacity of the undead. We could see them and they didn't appear to be undead, but then where are they coming from? What are their goals, etc. And that ability for a number of the people in the group to just bypass swaths of guards to get to the more violent ones, the more aggressive ones, I'm not sure. That just made me go, what's going on here?
Well, it even kind of second guesses the concept of them being under mind control, because the mind control we see is pretty effective even from a great distance. The mind control is very effective, and it would have, they would be fighting more, like they would have a lot more of a bloodthirst to them for that. So it does seem to be, and I think honestly, like we discussed last week, I think, speaking of limitations, that would be quite the ask to have, no matter how powerful you are as a vampire, to mind control an entire army.
Yep.
I don't think that's something that's going to be possible.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but Scanlan is attacked, and so we have the ruthless was the word I had for Stonefellow, is showing how ruthless he is. So brutal, ruthless. He is definitely, he relishes in what he's doing. He's in his moment when he gets to swing that beautiful hammer. I love the hammer.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, it was great. And he does wild things with it, including braining the rebel. What does it do, though? Including braining the rebel from the beginning that we saw at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, the unfortunate rebel who has been with us for this whole episode without a name, really does a heroic thing, rescuing Scanlan, and then just gets the entire top of her head caved in by this warhammer.
Exactly. One moment, we just lost ourselves here. Okay, so where were we? Talking about how ruthless Stonefellow was. And
yeah, you know, in the middle of the action.
Yeah, exactly. And you never want to end the thing in the middle of the action. And then we have the Stonefellow literally brains the person that helped him in the very beginning, and the rebel that carried us through, the nameless one.
Yeah, very unfortunate that we don't ever get their name, but yeah.
Yeah, it was. But then that definitely triggers something in Keyleth when that happens.
Yeah, she really goes all out after that, and we get to see her use a new beast form. Yeah,
that saber-toothed tiger, that was pretty awesome. That guy was really impressed with how that looked, and there we did see the guards actually step in really quick and protect Stonefellow. And again, but that kind of shows that it looked like they were more on a protective, defensive foot than they were trying to actually attack, because it would have been very easy for them to both use their halberds and stab the tiger. Right? She was sitting there violently slashing between their shields, and it was a perfect opportunity for them to kill her, and they didn't.
Yeah, I agree. It was just another one of those moments that made me go, Who are these guards, man?
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, and then we have Grog's punch, the one hit in the booze room.
Yes.
That was nice. Again, I just seeing that helmet collapsed in, and that shows the thing of the punch, and you know that his nose is sticking out the back of his head.
Yeah, caved in completely.
Yeah, that was a pretty brutal hit. But then we see Grog get happy and has the ale finally. And at first, like I was looking at, I'm like, was that actually? It had a poison symbol on it.
Did it?
Yeah, but I mean, oftentimes, I guess in the jugs they have either a triple X or they have like a skull and crossbones
Yep.
on jugs to show that it's. I mean, alcohol technically is a toxin,
Yep.
so that does work.
Yeah. We got to see Grog happy again. Now he doesn't have to kill everyone because the day has been saved. The ale has been found.
But he still wants to. He doesn't have to.
Oh, yeah.
But he still wants to kill everybody.
Doesn't change.
No. And then Archie decides to create a diversion. And again, so that Scanlan uses the lightning. It's like, hey, Grog, check this out. And he throws the lightning, and it just hits the guard's back and fizzles out. Or the soldier's back.
What a day.
Yeah, not a good day for his Scanlan's magic at all. And so the distraction is created by Archie, who runs forward and again runs right into the middle of guards, of like 5 guards, stabs one through the bottom of the chin, and the rest all just kind of stand there looking at him as he does that.
What am I supposed to do now? Yeah.
Yeah, but again, you would think that the first thing would be they failed their attack save. But that would be that you would think that would be the thing to trigger someone coming in and running at them, would trigger the guards to be a lot more violent than they were. So I think you're right that there is something definitely more to the guards going on. Yeah. And then Percy, they all start running away, and Percy decides to hang back because he sees Stonefell through the grill.
Yeah, and then we get into some spooky Percy time as he puts on his mask and literally stalks Stonefeld from the other side of the bars until he can get to him.
Yep, and I found that was kind of almost like an allegory to Keyleth turning into a saber-toothed tiger, and almost like a zoo scenario where it is the dangerous beast lurking behind the bars, trying to find, like looking at their prey and trying to get out and get to them. And we get confirmation that, yes, the names on the barrel of the pepper box are, in fact, magically emblazed. Because not too often in my life have I seen engraving glow red that way.
And then kind of dissipate from it after the killing shot.
Yeah. And it almost seemed like it added power to the shot.
Yep.
Like those shots that came out of those barrels specifically had extra power behind them.
And there was extra zest to this interaction as well, because we get a chance to hear how Stonefeld basically explains that he's just killing for fun. He doesn't really have any thought to the killing that he's doing. And then Percy retorts with, out of my list, I'm the most excited to be finished with you, and then removes his mask, in which Stonefeld realizes who it is, and then gives him his just desserts.
Yeah, that was like I shot. My notes here are Percy blows him to hell. Yay!
Yeah,
because I love what they did with Percy's eyes, with the reddish black with a reddish streak through it.
Yeah.
And
the super anime eyebrows.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the entire episode he had really anime eyebrows.
Yeah.
And it was, and again, that's the thing too, that the the glasses glaring over is a big thing. Mm-hmm. That's anime, and also from Sin City was a big thing as well. Having that.
Yes.
But he does like destroys the hammer, first thing of all things. Which again, that was another thing that was for me. Like either Stonefell is a complete moron or is so strong that he doesn't notice anything. But you think if you're wielding a hammer, that's got to have at least like a 60-pound head on that thing, and the head gets blown off, you're gonna be going from like this to like, oh, what? And you're gonna immediately notice, not try to swing it in front of you and be like, oh, what happened to my hammer?
You're not going to need to see it to realize that something's wrong here.
Exactly. But yeah, he just blows him away, blows his hole in his chest, blows his arm off, blows his hand off. Percy really doesn't like hands.
Yeah, he did a number, and I noticed that as well. But I want to say the first shot was the arm or the hand, and I was just like, man, Percy, what do you have against people's arms?
Yeah, because it was the hammer, then blow the arm off, blow the hand off, and then it cut hammer. Back to just. So that was,
all I could think of was maybe it's part of the PTSD of like being tortured. So he's blowing off the arms of everyone because that's what they used to torture him with. That was me probably thinking too much about it. Maybe he just likes shooting people in the arm.
That makes sense. It does make sense. And that's the thing I noticed too, is that I made a note of it here, is that, yeah, Stonefell's name, Captain Stonefell, burned off the barrel after he was dead. Mm-hmm. He fired every round of that gun, and the other names didn't burn off. Yep. So that's what led me to believe that it's like when the gun or the pepper box is confronting the person whose name is emblazed on it, it has that extra power. It's got that extra juice to go into it. Not to mention his freaky smokiness plague doctor thing has extra power that drives into it as well. I really am looking forward to an explanation on
that. Crazy anime orange eyes. It was quite a sight.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And then he moves right on to turn around and point it at Vax.
Yeah, that was a scene.
That was a tense scene.
Yeah, and that was like the first time I've actually seen them actively angry with each other. Like they've been bickering and sniping at each other, but actively angry and like, oh, is this actually going to turn into something level?
Right. Yeah. It feels like it probably should be an unspoken rule that you don't point the pepperback box at your party. Like, maybe don't do that because it's a dangerous weapon and it shoots. So I understand Vax's anger. And I thought it was a very interesting dynamic to have happen because it just shows how kind of out of control Percy gets when he's goes into his plague doctor persona and blows everyone up. He barely can tell friend from foe.
Yeah. And he, even when he's on the come down from that, he still has that rage within him. Because that's the thing where he's like, there's not this like, oh, that's a point of contrition where he's like, oh, I'm sorry that this happened. It's like, no, I am the last remaining Derulo. I will have my revenge. Like, no one is going to stop me. So if you try to stop me, yes, I will point this thing at you again. Right?
And then that's where we get the bonus from Archie.
Yeah. And that's where I have the notes of how. How did she survive? How was she not killed? How was she not hunted down? How did she stay in the village? How did she become a part of the resistance? Is she the Kestrel? How did the others, the Briarwoods, not know that she was still around if they recognized Percy as soon as they saw him?
But that's quickly answered for you.
Yes, very quickly, because then we see the Grog tosses the booze, the fireball, blows everyone away. Again, that's the other fire symbolism. There's the fireball that kills everyone and cleanses the place, and the building is burnt down. We have that look back that we talked about. And then we see Cassandra with Lady Briarwood and a unique white strip of hair. That's there. Generally, there's white stripes of hair have some form of meaning behind them in most storytelling.
I would say that's probably very true in this instance as well. And in this quick scene that we see with Cassandra and Delilah, we also get a snippet of information where she basically says, "I'm sure you've heard that your brother's here. This doesn't change anything."
Yeah. So that was my kind of thing. Was like, okay, so maybe she's not the Kestrel, because that was my thing. Oh, Cassandra's the Kestrel, and she's been working with them and all this other stuff. And then it's like, with that whole scene, I was like, oh, maybe she's not the Kestrel, and she didn't seem to be in any form of distress. So either she's working with them, she's like acquiesced and joined them, or she's under some kind of control. But if she's under some kind of control, you wouldn't have to have that line of "this doesn't change anything."
So the first thing that I think of when I look at this scene is that basically Stockholm syndrome, Beauty and the Beast. Like, she's been there for so long that, or in this scenario for so long that she doesn't know that she's a captive.
Yeah, and the Briarwoods are pretty good at spinning a tale, because they came up with that whole tale,
Yep.
and she was young, so they may have found her, brought her back, and raised her, saying that your entire family left you, and we're here to take care of you and raise you as our own.
Right. Your brother literally left you dying.
Yeah. But I mean, it depends on if she was young enough, she may not even remember what happened to her family.
Right.
Right? They may have been able to, or at least mind control away from her what happened to the family, and just trick her into, this is who you are, we're your family now, and we're going to take care of you.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. But all in all, very well done. Another great episode. There is, as we pulled apart, I don't think we need to say what our issues were, because we kind of brought them up as we discussed.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And there were definitely some incongruities that happened throughout the episode, but again, nothing major, nothing earth-shattering, nothing that's going to throw you out of the story completely and make you not want to come back to it.
Right.
It's just little things
Nothing
that shine.
Right. Nothing that's going to affect the plot. Nothing that you're like, this doesn't make any sense at all. What are we going to do?
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to just things that are possible oversights, like we said, that really shine brightly because of how well everything else is done. And part of it is also just things not... I don't want to say things not like Pike not being handled well, or not being handled in the way that we would like to see. Everyone's going to have their own opinion on how the Pike thing is being handled. There may be some people that would have the feel of, why bring her in at all? She wasn't there, just leave her off to the side and use flashbacks to describe what happened when she does reunite with the group. But they didn't do that. I do like the fact that they are showing her and carrying her along and keeping her a relevant part of the story. I just think that they can really up the ante on that. And if not a complete episode about Pike, I'd at least like to see, at minimum, like a quarter of an episode to show what she's doing. Kind of like they did with the front door, back door. We see the guys bumbling at the back door. We see the front door going well and moving through like a well-oiled machine. You can do that. You can have, they could have even done that when they were going, to add a bit of a timeline of them traveling towards Whitestone and then showing what she is doing there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There may still be space to do that once they're dealing with all this stuff here. So there may be other points for them to do that still. But
Ooh, I hope so.
Yeah, I really want to see. I like Pike's character. I want to know more of what's going on. And it's just...
Absolutely.
They're giving you just enough to not forget about her, but not enough to continue caring about her, which is my fear.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I feel the same way. I feel like she's still there in our thoughts, but my need to know what's going on with her just kind of continues to dwindle as her story doesn't get fleshed out.
Yeah. And the stuff that they're doing is so cryptic that it doesn't... There's, like you said, it's not fleshed out, and there's not enough depth to it to keep you caring and to keep you wondering. It's, okay, she can't reach the Everlight. All right, well, she can't reach the Everlight. Okay. Well, she goes into this dark spot, goes into her meditation spot, it's dark. Okay. She goes into meditation spot, it's dark. Okay. She can't reach the Everlight. Sure, it's dark. Okay. Now there's flames. Okay.
All right. Not going to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah,
I
we
guess we'll
get it.
we'll check in with you next week.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like we need more than it's dark and she can't reach it. And we already kind of knew that there was something to do with inside of her, and that came before she even lost contact with the Everlight. That came when she was trying to bless the house. You could tell that there was a disconnect. There wasn't something that she wasn't fully connected to her goddess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll have
All
to see how that
right.
plays out. So what is the line counter for this?
Yeah. So take this with a grain of salt. I ended up having to do this in a very weird way. The official script of the episodes doesn't have every line marked on who says it. It has every line, but only like every fifth line has who says what. So I had to use a combination of the script and watching the show in order to pull everything.
Okay.
It was weird. So there's roughly 382 lines in the first episode. And if we're looking at everyone, it's pretty split up. With the majority of lines, about a quarter of them being Scanlans, and a lot of those being parts of songs. If we drill down even more and just look at the split in the group Vox Machina, 30% of the lines in the entire episode are Scanlans, and then 17% are Vexes.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So it does, but at the same time, I was very surprised at how much Vex was speaking in the first couple episodes, just because I assumed that it was just split a little bit differently. I thought everyone was going to be a little bit closer in their line count. For the most part, they were, except for Scanlan, who's a big outlier. But Vex being at 17% versus the next the next one that speaks the most is Pike and Vax at 13%. And then we have the lowest amount of lines going to Percy, as we all kind of expected in the first few episodes, at 8%.
Wow. So it's like they pulled. We knew that they obviously pulled Percy for a reason, and that's because he is going to get so much airtime moving forward through the rest of it that they held back
Yep.
in the beginning and kept him more of a mystery for us.
Absolutely. So then if we look at some of the other data, there is, let's see if I can find which one of these it is. 8% of all the lines in the first episode went to characters that are not named.
Really?
8% of all lines went to non-named characters. Random guards, the adventuring party at the beginning, just unnamed people. And then you start getting into mostly Vox Machina. And then if you want to get into other people that aren't part of that group, it's like the barkeep, the tavern keeper, the Minotaur changeling barkeeper at 10%.
Yeah. At 10%.
10%
Wow. Of the NPC.
of the entire episode's lines in episode
The entire
one.
episode was the barkeeper had 10%. So even the barkeeper had more lines than Percy.
Yes.
Wow.
Because Percy's lines actually, because when you add everyone else's, Percy's lines actually dip down to about 2% of all lines in the show.
Yeah, because he really did not have a lot to say for himself. They really kept him quiet, and that was, again, like I love the fact that all the things that we're pulling out and these details that we're picking up on do have some substance, do have, like, we're not shooting into the dark, we are picking up on things that's there to be seen and to be picked up on. But all in all, another fantastic episode that I gotta say I really enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to the rest. I am gonna find that time to stop and watch things, the rest of them. But the thing is, I enjoy it so much, I don't want to do it as a background thing. When I watch it, I want to be able to watch it with undivided attention. And then that's just kind of tough. Like I could very easily have it playing while I'm working and working on something else and having it off to the side, but A, it's going to distract me from my work, and B, it deserves more than that.
Sure.
Yeah. So this has been great. I love it. I'm looking forward to the next episode, which we will be breaking down on Monday. And LJ should be back with us next week, for those of you who are wondering. I'm still trying to figure out how to word that into the credits. I'm going to put some quippy thing into the credits of the VOD for this. Because we do actually have, so for those of you who are looking, if you go on the Comscribe.ca website or to the Comscribe YouTube page, we do have the video on demands available that you can go back if you've missed part of or all of an episode, or if you want to go back and watch the other 5 After the Roll episodes that we've done. And they come with nifty graphics or a nifty one transition. And then we get we have some credits rolling through and special thanks to people and everything as well. There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much for the chat. Did you have any other points on this last one, or?
I don't think so. Like I said at the top of this, it was a pretty straightforward episode, with just some interesting and fun things to talk about. So. Yeah.
They did. Again, the quips, the fun. There's a couple of other insults, and the day you started doing the barf counter, they stopped with the barf. The day I started with collecting Scanlan insults, they stopped having Scanlan insult people. It's like
the day that we decided to start counting Scanlan's butt, we've never seen his butt again.
That's it. It's like they knew. There we go. Well, thank you very much for joining me with this episode 6, Spark of Rebellion. It was a fantastic, and maybe that's where all the flames came from too, was because it was called Spark of Rebellion. And, they're pretty good at tying those things in together that way. So there we go.
Perfect.
So enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you very much for being here, and we will be in touch and talk again very soon.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Have a good night.